Yeah, I don't want no left mama's house young cause of the me and daddy couldn't get along, too many Yeah, the problem was this, that I couldn't see the promise if the problem exists. I was walking through the wilderness, lost and afraid. I left the pack a while back, I'm on a path that I made. I'm out to self-discover, I don't need to be saved, said only people who were standing 6 feet from their grave. As I fell, there was a sound, not the one that I raised, but a song that I could hear, in the distance it played. The chords, a melody, like a song that I knew. And when they sang about a savior, I just knew it was true. That day, I found a treasure in that field where I laid. And to this day, I can remember that first prayer I prayed. As I covered all of it up and I hid it away, there was a promise from the presence of the Lord that was made. And I'm standing on that promise through the problems today. The problem is the promise doesn't push the problems away. In fact, I only found it brings the problems around. And the answer to that problem's in the treasure I found. I got the promise. So when the problems come around, I got the promise. Even though it hasn't come yet, I got the promise. Yeah, the promise is this. When the problems come around, you know the promise exists. I got the promise. Yeah, every time they come around, I got the promise. Even though it hasn't come yet, I got the promise. Yeah, the promise is this, that the problems don't compare to the promise he gives. I walked the temple grounds and I was praising the Lord when other people came to see what I was praising him for. Many raised their hands, but others mocked and they scorned, and they exclaimed, that's not the way we should be praising for sure. Plus they knew my past, so they would whisper and gasp, while some I used to know just came to listen and laugh. It was a feeling so bad, and many years would soon pass. It put the vision I had in a prison at last. But then I had a memory of treasure I found, so I sold all that I had and I drove to the grounds. And much to my surprise, there was a sign with a deal. So I wrote the man a check and I bought the whole field. I got a promise. So when the problems come around, I got the promise. Even though it hasn't come yet, I got the promise. Yeah, the promise is this. When the problems come around, you know the promise exists. I got the promise. Yeah, every time they come around, I got the promise. Even though it hasn't come yet, I got the promise. Yeah, the promise is this, that the problems don't compare to the promise he gives. Promise locked, I got it on sight. I've been dreaming about this like all of my life, yeah. In my lane and the problem's gonna come, but my God is still the same and I know he's not done. So right now I got my feet on these tracks, still writing these raps, yeah, that's just one of my hats. I'm pointing to the Lord as I take a step back, and I'm swinging for the fences. This time I'm up the bat. I gotta promise. Even when it doesn't make sense, you gotta promise. Even when the devil says you don't, you gotta promise. Yeah, the promise is this. When the problems come around, you know the promise exists. I gotta promise. Even when it doesn't make sense, you gotta promise. Even when the devil says you don't, you gotta promise. Yeah, the promise is this, that the problems don't compare to the promise he gives. You gotta promise.